So wouldn't you know it, Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, released in 2021. I agree with the champions of this film, and I am not a big fan of the DC movies that were coming out up to this point, Man of Steel onward. Actually, I think they're quite bad, like terrible even. Man of Steel was garbage, and there's that Suicide Squad thing the next year. Sorry, a few years long. Batman v Superman was crap, but better than Man of Steel, to be fair. I didn't see much of the 2017 Justice League. It seemed quite sloppy to me. Although what was accomplished here was a beautiful realization of the DC Comics mythos at its best in the post-crisis form, particularly in the sort of late 90s to 2000s zeitgeist. You get vibes of what was going on with artists such as Alex Ross or writers like Grant Morrison manifesting in some of the best scenes of Justice League. Finally, Barry Allen realized in a phenomenal format. I don't even watch that TV show crap. And then you have that some Wonder Woman scenes. I think Batman's fairly good in it. It's just Martian Manhunter appears. I think it's a very ambitious and gratifying film for those who really appreciate the potential of that sort of Titanic universe of the DC Comics deities kind of forming a team to combat apocalyptic threats to the entire cosmos. Fascinating. I think this is far better than the Infinity War crap. Civil War onward was really kind of crummy in the Marvel Avengers verse, I feel, MCU, whatever. I like the two Avengers films by Joss Whedon, particularly the first one, but this one, nah. But this one, Zack Snyder's Justice League, probably even better than those. Maybe even better than X-Men Days of Future Past, which I really loved. Quite possibly the greatest superhero film of all time by the standards of those who were fanatics of comic books, certainly in regard to DC's fictional universe. It has to be Zack Snyder's Justice League. It truly, and here's the thing, the Joe Russo MCU films, which is to say Civil War and the two Infinity War pictures, they're lazily directed. You just have a camera panning out of a CGI Captain America 4 Iron Man, and then it pans out of them, and the camera follows them moving as though they're a playable protagonist in a video game, and all this action occurs around them, very simulated, coordinated, and it's considering the immense infinite possibilities of digital animation, this is not good enough. And okay, think about it. If your film was fully animated, not live action whatsoever, fully animated, think anime, you would storyboard your sequence a lot more interestingly than that, even if it were a long take. And, more importantly, if it were a comic book, it would be storyboarded via the panels in a much more interesting, seamless, fascinating, visually inventive and creative way. The Russo brothers don't direct those films, well, they direct the actors to do their ha-ha quippy crap, and then you have all these VFX artists who, no one's in charge, they're just doing what they're told. It's nonsense. Whereas Zack Snyder, I think, had a very fluid vision of what to accomplish here. He'd seen the Infinity War duology, saw what could go wrong. He looked at some of the comic books. He saw what else can be done. How can I do it better? How can I address the complaints that people do have about these films? Because there were comic book fans who were still ardently, even though they were being pandered to relentlessly seemingly, were more the comic normies to be fair, some of the more ardent, angry comic book fans, and there are plenty of them, of the angry variety that is, absolutely, very vocal, they were still not on board with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they were all on board with Avengers in 2012. I do remember little comic book nerds, even the ones who'd hated the Marvel films up to that point, and any of them, including the X-Men films, they were all on board with Avengers 2012. I remember forum posts saying, 100 reasons why I, as a diehard 4 fan, was finally happy with 4 on film with the Avengers 2012. And it had all these reasons why I was, faithful to, 4 in the comics, blah, blah, blah. The point is, the Marvel films after the Joss Whedon involvement, they didn't capture even Age of Ultron, the fans were kind of angry about, though, the hardcore fans. Whereas this is Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think, is the first time some of these hardcore angry fans, which are, I won't call them angry, I mean, angry is sounds like a pejorative. I mean, comic book fans with standards who think hang on a minute, good stuff can be done with this medium, has been done with this medium. Let's not just praise comic books for being comic books. Let's actually, or comic book adaptations featuring the characters we love just for being that. Let's, if they take a critical view of Superman 78 or Batman 89, they wouldn't just be like, oh, hey, it's got my favorite character, it's great. They have a critical eye. I think that's interesting. Because during the 2000s, we thought these movies are very hit or miss, and the comic book fans were all like, oh man, imagine if these films are good and paid a lot of fan service. Well, now they do, but they're also as formulaic and crummy as, maybe not as ever, but almost as ever. The 2000s time was pretty dire, but there weren't quite as many of them coming out then. Still once a year in any case. I think we'll close it here for now. Thanks everyone for your time. I think this is a direction which cinema should be heading toward. I mean, this sort of Avatar 2 I haven't seen Avatar 2 yet. I hope it's as good as this. I'm not the biggest Avatar 1 fan, but I've been told by people like Oakshot that Avatar 2 is very good, even though he didn't care for the first. I'll leave you all to it. Sorry for my hubris, I suppose.